Good morning. For the next hour, we are going to honor and remember our very dear friend, Mark Hite. And when I say our friend, I really mean your friend, because even if you never had a chance to meet Mark, you felt his love, whether you knew it or not, in so many areas of our lives here in the Tennessee Valley. For the last 30 years, this was his home, and he made it a better place for all of us. I heard the news of Mark's passing through a coworker early Wednesday morning, and both of us kept saying to each other that there must be some mistake. As I talked to friends who also knew Mark throughout the day, I learned that their reaction had been the same. After the shock of learning he was gone, our next thoughts went to the hole Mark's absence will leave in our community. And so I thought, what would Mark Hite want? Mark Hite would want us to keep the focus not on him, but on the community he so loved. He was, as Mark Warren says, the definition of a servant leader. I took a minute to Google servant leader, actually, and here's the definition I found. Someone who does not seek attention, a person who cares for and values people, someone who is able to see unique qualities and strengths in those they lead and nurture those strengths to help others succeed, a person who is humble. It could also have said Mark Hite. And so if you were lucky to know Mark, you're probably nodding your head as I talk, knowing that truly was who he was. If you didn't know Mark, I hope this hour will let you feel like you know him now. And my hope for all of us, me included, is that we will all go into our day reflecting on the power that one life can make in the lives of others. We all had the same opportunities that Mark sought, to see the good and further it, to see a need and address it, to use the gifts we each are given to the benefit of others. So Emily Nespajani is with the American Heart Association, one of the many nonprofits that Mark so supported, and we're going to begin with you. So thanks for coming. And you were nodding your head.
Yes, I was.
If you knew Mark, those words were very easy for me to write, actually. I mean, I just sat down and said what I wanted to say, but it was effortless because he was so truly that. Right?
He was. He was. I sat here and nodded my head the entire time you were talking about him. I can't think of a better way to describe him.
You were one of the first phone calls I made on Wednesday, and your tears were present then too. It was a shock for everybody, but he would probably be saying, Julie, let's talk about the Heart Association. Let's get down to business, right? So it's one of the reasons I wanted to structure the hour this way. We're going to talk round robin about Mark with his friends, Emily included, Scotty Bowman, Katie Harbison is here. Other members will be here too of his life. But let's talk about the Heart Association, because how many years was he a strong advocate for y'all?
Nearly a decade.
Do you remember the first time you met him?
How could you not? In fact, you know, I met him years before that. He showed me a home, and he made an impact then. And then later in my career, when I invited him to join us, I got to spend time with him, and immediately I recognized him as someone I could learn from. Mm-hmm. And that really became the common denominator throughout our entire experience together. Is he brought so much to the American Heart Association and to so many community nonprofits in town, but what he gave to me professionally and personally, I don't know that I could even put it into words.
He could probably have been a master guider on time management. I think I would not want to ever take a look at what his calendar looked like on a given day. Every minute of it was buttoned up. But so he was happy to lend a hand, but he wanted to lend it efficiently. And I bet that was a big part of his help to the Heart Association.
It was. You know, when he supported anything in the community, he gave 100%. Everything that he did was meaningful. Mm-hmm. It was intentional. And I think the biggest thing that I will always take away from our time with him was, sorry.
That's okay, I've got Kleenex.
I think the biggest takeaway that I will always have is that he was so genuine and honest and up front. I could always count on him to let me know if something needed to change or be better, or if connections need to be made. He just was so smart and, like you said, very efficient and thoughtful and intentional about how he gave of his time. And I learned so much from him.
So when I talk about the holes that he will leave in the community, part of our hope too in bringing you this hour is for, if you did not have a chance to know Mark, to really honor what I say, that the power of one life, because he used his gifts. But now other people will want to step in and use their respective gifts. Heart disease in this community is a big one. I mean, we are in the stroke belt here in the Tennessee Valley. He was always a big supporter of Go Red for Women. Heart Month is in February.
It is.
So the lives he was able to touch in support of you was great.
Yes, Heart Month was always something that was very important to Mark. The message, he wanted to make sure to spread the message far and wide. And I remember we were sitting in a meeting once and he said, Emily, how do we go from taking this life-saving message to 400 people in a room to 400,000? How are we spreading this message to those who need it most? This was very personal for him. He would call, at 9:30 at night and say, what about this? Or should we think about this? And how can we make a bigger impact? That's true investment in what you're leaning into. And that's a gift, and that's not something that that I can say about a lot of folks who are involved. And so he spent a lot of time spreading the message, and he would narrow it down, make sure that it stuck. And then everywhere he went, in fact, I laughed to myself because in many of the photos that I saw and the beautiful tributes that came about, he had that red dress pin on.
He wore that proudly.
All the time. A beautiful reminder of what an advocate he was, not only for the American Heart Association, but for those who had suffered from heart disease and stroke. 1 in 3 die each year from heart disease. And we had a message one year that was about, one is one too many. That 1 in 3, one is one too many. And I would hear him talk about that often. And he and I spent a lot of time with you talking about it and discussing how important it was to make sure that message got spread.
It was really important for us because Mark came on our show about every 3 weeks or so. He loved 3+U. I don't mind saying that. I think he felt like he could connect with people when he was here. So we got a chance to really have him our way very frequently for I don't even know how many years. And one of the things that would happen, often he would come on just by himself, but whenever he had a chance to use his time with us to further somebody else, and usually it was the Heart Association or one of the other nonprofits that we'll talk to in the hour, he loved that. It fed him, I think.
And he did. I just really appreciated him using his platform to advocate for us, and we were one of many, and we were it's kind of like he had said once, like his children. He wanted to foster growth and spread the word, and he did it beautifully.
So he came in knowing probably what he wanted to do and lending aid to you, but if anybody's watching and they're thinking, maybe I could try to do something in my own way. At the Heart Association, do y'all have room for people to kind of step in and help you?
Of course, always. Just like many of our other nonprofit friends, there are always ways that people can lean in and help us and spread the word and create awareness. And it could look like something from coming in and help us with everyday tasks to, stepping up, being involved in an even bigger long-term way. It just depends on how they'd love to.
Well, I would challenge anybody as we're going through today's show and you're looking on Facebook and the pictures you'll see in our hour here to find one picture of Mark Hite not smiling. He always was smiling. So thank you, Emily. You're going to hang around and join our round robin here in a little bit. But our tribute to Mark continues. We'll be talking with Scotty Bowman at the Launch Pad, Katie Harbison at the Chamblas Center for Children, 2 other nonprofits very dear to his heart when we come back. So I had talked earlier about Mark's smile. So we don't want this to just be an hour where we're all very sad, even though we are. We want to celebrate Mark's life. So I'll kind of give you a little bit of a funny, because I know we'll talk a lot about his humility. It was real, but he knew, don't get us wrong, how to put his salesman hat on if it was for a cause that he supported and loved. And he completely lit up whenever he had a chance to help the Chamblas Center for Children. So Katie Harbison is the president and CEO at Chamblas, and many a day day, I guess in the month of, was it usually February, y'all would sit here with your Mardi Gras beads on?
Yes, February 9th is coming up.
It's
so yeah,
coming up.
We're at that time right now, and he was such an integral part of that event. It's going to be.
He loved those children at the Chamblas Center. You can, in all the pictures that you'll see, and I kind of noticed it some last night, there's a different beam on his face when he's around those kids.
Yes, there's one picture we have of him with kids around him, and he's told me before, he's like, that's my favorite picture.
Really?
You know, of all the pictures we have of him involved in our organization, the one where he's got like 4 kids hugging on him, it's his favorite one, and he's beaming.
One of the things I thought of with you this morning is how the Chamblas Center has been around. I never can remember how many years.
Well, we're at 151 now.
I was going to make it 160, so I wasn't that far off. So there have been many, many influential people who have helped continue the mission of Chamblas, but Mark has got to be in the top group.
Yeah, I mean, we have an amazing history of support in this community, but you know, here recently, Mark has been one of our biggest, if not the biggest cheerleader that we have. And I remember meeting him, it's probably a decade ago, when he was getting involved with volunteer work through Keller Williams and coming on our campus, and he was just excited about everything we did. At that point, he wasn't on our board, but he was just so invested, and he expressed interest in being on our board, and then came on the board in 2016, and he was our current board chairman.
You know, as I talked to you, maybe one of the things that made Mark so able to be so influential, he was a curious person, and he asked a lot of questions. He was a learner.
He was. I also think he was just such a driven person. Like, if he found something that he was really interested in, he went after it. Or if he found something he was really passionate in, he went after it. And I think he had enough energy to go after lots of things and be involved in a lot of things. And I think that's another unique thing about Mark, is it's not like he just had one thing. You know, it wasn't just one cause. There wasn't just one group. It was a lot of groups, a lot of places where he was highly involved and highly invested of his time and his resources. And it's just incredible.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about Chamblas, though, and the work he did there for you, because one of the things, it's a big sprawling campus there at the Chamblas Center
17
for Children.
acres.
So you always are volunteer dependent. You have a staff, but you really thrive on those volunteers. Yet he found a way, I'm guessing, to kind of come in, and he probably knew every facet of it.
Well, and he first got involved in that volunteer side, where he was literally, I remember him cleaning out a closet, you know, doing yard work. We have some great pictures of him, you know, on campus doing those manual labor things. So he knew that physical plant side of us. But then when he joined our board, you know, he went on all these committees and, you know, was just so involved in all these areas of our agency. And as board chairman, he was involved in everything. I mean, I talked to him, maybe not daily, but at least more than weekly, just about everything. He knew what was going on, and he was always wanting to help and be a part of it.
When I decided to include in the open that part that Mark Warren's text to me yesterday had been that he was a servant leader. So when I decided I'm going to just Google that, my mouth kind of dropped open, to be honest, when I read those particular definitions, and hearing you talk about how he would work with so many people on the board, that servant leader ability to pull out the best in people, that's a real gift, but it's one he had.
And I also think I think he was an inspirational leader too, in the way that you saw him, and actually a board member told me this, has told me this a couple of times since he's passed, that they saw him doing so much and so excited, and they felt like, oh my gosh, I need to do more, you know, so that he could kind of bring people along with his excitement and his support. And he was also an amazing connector of people. And I told him this before. I said, you are the best connector of people. If he met somebody that he thought would, you know, click or would be beneficial, that relationship, he would be like, hey, I think you need to meet this person. And he was always thinking about how to help others that way too.
And before you could say okay, he had already sent the mutual
he'd send a text or something, and next thing you know, you're already talking to him,
lunch.
and y'all are best friends or something. But yeah, he was just, he was the ultimate connector.
What kind of relationship or involvement did he have with the kids directly? I know we see these pictures, but was that fairly frequent for him?
I mean, it just depends. Some days he would come on campus, and a lot of times he was actually very involved with staff too. And there are several pictures that might be scrolling through of him with some of our staff. But yeah, he loved coming into the classroom and getting hugs from kids and high fives, and you know, he was willing to do whatever.
Am I right? Was he often king of the Mardi Gras?
Well, you could only be king once, but he was king.
He was last year?
He was last year's king of Mardi Gras, and was set to crown the new king this year. So
I don't want to go into uncomfortable territory, but that is around the corner.
It is.
So is there anything you're asking of the public to do to support?
You know, we have not decided exactly what is going to happen at Mardi Gras. He was our kind of lead sponsor of the event, and kind of the unofficial spokesperson, mascot of Mardi Gras. And you know, he and a bunch of his team were always there in sequins, and you know, just having an amazing time. And we're not sure exactly what the Mardi Gras event's going to look like this year. It'll still be fun, but there might be some different things happening this year.
Well, part of the power of that 151-year legacy of the Chamblas Center is to think over 151 years how many people it has taken to keep those doors open and watch life, you know, continue to thrive for the children and the parents. So Mark was one of them, and a big one of them.
He was.
But any one of us can step up and join the effort.
Yeah, and I hope that he has inspired people to do that.
Me too.
Either before or now, just to know that you can step in and step up and either be a strong financial supporter or just a cheerleader. I think that's another thing that Mark did so well.
Oh, yeah.
He was a cheerleader of others, just more than anything else, of other people, of other causes and missions. And I think that's one of the best ways we can give back and fill that void, is to step into those shoes.
Then you led us beautifully into our commercial break, because when we come back, Scotty Bowman's going to take the seat, and she was one of those people who was a cheerleader for him, he a cheerleader for her, and we'll talk about the launch pad and their friendship when we come back. In the last 2 or 3 years, one of Mark's greatest efforts was to lend support to his good friend Scotty Bowman and her outreach to help women find sobriety at the launch pad. I think their friendship kind of embodies how Mark didn't really draw a line between business and service. Scotty is here this morning, and if I read on your Facebook post from the Big Chill, y'all met because he was a customer in the restaurant, and from that a friendship.
We did, and he has always been an amazing customer to the Big Chill. But even more than that, that just opened an avenue for me to really get to know him. When we did meet, I was still using, and he often tells a story about how I was up and down on a ladder. I was trying to fix a light, and I wanted to shine a certain spot, and I was so obsessive over it because I was using cocaine at the time that I was just up and down the ladder and up and down the ladder. And he, after all of it was said and done, he pulled me aside and he was like, "Are you okay? What's going on?" And he didn't know me well enough to even get that personal with me yet. But it just, those little things of seeing what the kind of picture I was putting out to my guest really made me start thinking. So he was sort of instrumental in even me seeking out getting sober in the first place.
That kind of ties in with, like, Emily Nespajani from the Heart Association had said that he was really good about even letting you know kindly what wasn't working, because he wanted the positive outcome. That's what he did in that case with you.
In that case, he was like, you know, it basically was telling me I was creating a bad reputation for my business. And we were becoming known as a drug bar. And, you know, I really had to work hard after getting sober to change that reputation.
Well, and so let me pause, because there might be some people who are watching who are thinking, okay, how is this conversation fitting in? And I have not let people know really what the launch pad is. But Scotty is very open about her walk with substance abuse. And so 3 years ago, you started the launch pad, and you've helped how many women now find sobriety?
We sent 37 women through our program in the first year with only 8 beds. And in 3 short years, we've grown from 1 house to 5, 8 beds to 49, And in total, we've had about 145 women go through our program.
Okay.
And the ones that we have currently in our home represent 82 children.
Wow.
Who are estranged from their families.
So that's one of the reasons why I kind of saved you for the third one, because you kind of, to me, bring a lot of this all together. Because Mark did have this great love of children and keeping families supported. The McClellan Shelter for Families was he was a big advocate for them too. But 3 years ago even, Scotty, people were not quite as comfortable talking about substance abuse issues, even just 3 years ago. But Mark believed in it, and he was really happy to get out there and advocate.
He was eager to learn. He really didn't understand, even through our friendship over the last 25 years, he really didn't understand addiction and how it got a hold on people. And he was so diligent in his efforts to learn. And he would start coming to me, he would say, hey, I've got a friend and I think he may be an alcoholic. What can I do to help? And he even had one employee, and he said, I've given her chance after chance. And I said, you know, it doesn't say in the program that you have to be a rug. You don't have to lay down and let somebody walk on you. Sometimes you have to stand up. So I directed him to read the chapter to the employer in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, so that he could learn more about how to handle that situation. So even though he wasn't an addict, he really wanted to handle situations with grace and dignity like he always did. And you know, that's one of the things that I really learned from him. He taught me to be the best version of myself. You know, he brought out the best in me.
Did he do that, Scotty, because you watched him? Like Katie said at Chamblas, people would watch him take all these efforts, and so they thought, I better keep up? Or do you think he taught you that just from the kindness he showed?
He taught me that through his kindness and through his conversation. He never hesitated to call me out on something. He was always very honest with me. My favorite thing that he would always say, and I could tell when he was going to say something very important to me, was to be candid. And then he would go into whatever it was that I needed to change or that wasn't working in one of my businesses, and oftentimes he would say to be candid, and he would tell me something about himself, very personal, so that I could relate to him on a more personal level.
Once you were in his circle of trust, he never would overstep, but he was very quick to be there to share confidences.
He certainly was. I mean, and there were times, Lord, he would send me pictures of things going on in Key West at certain bars, and he would say, hey, I think we should try this at the Big Chill. And it was never, you should try this. He included himself as like a team member for my businesses.
You know what? That is a true thing about him, because he meant it sincerely, but every now and then you'd have to scratch your head and say, wait a minute, when did we become coworkers? He just, if he liked it, he wanted to be involved. To him, he was
always my coworker. And even when assembling the board of directors at the Launchpad, I mean, honestly, we were just going to have one house. I wanted it to be a nonprofit, so my lawyer instructed me I needed a board of directors. I was like, okay, so I just called up 8 of my very best friends and said, will you be on my board of directors? You know, and he was in the top 3 of those calls, and he gladly accepted. And I look back over our 3 years with him on our board, and there were times that I was lost and didn't know what to do without him. You know, he helped me to learn how to run a board, along with, you know, a couple of other of my really good friends, one that has some law experience and would have to pull me back in. But one of the things I think Mark taught me the best is I'm often known to fly by the seat of my pants. Well, he flies by the seat of his pants, but he does it in a way that you don't really know. It looks like his speed of handling things might be impulsive, but when actually it's just very well thought out, and it's a gift that he had. That he could do things quickly, but not seem rash and impulsive.
He also could change with the need, though. I've seen him in the studio so many times, and I'm kind of getting this mental picture of how I don't think his brain ever really shut off.
He and I's brain, neither one really shut off. I always call him the boy version of myself, and I think that's why we really became so close, because we're so similar in our work ethic and our hard work and our money management and our love of helping the community and helping others. And he would bring me to events. You know, he had a gift for bringing people to events that he felt would donate to his cause.
Yeah,
So he would invite me to these events, and I'd be like, oh great, you know, and I really did enjoy it. But I would always give gladly, you know, because that's something that he did to me, is to give. But it was also the connections that he offered me, going to the Rotary or going to the Raise the Roof at Habitat. You know, and anytime that I was with him and we were raising the roof, I raised my hand.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because we've got to take a commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to change the setup here a little bit. Jens Christensen is here with Habitat. Eric Light, who is the pastor at St. Mark's Methodist Church, which is Mark's beloved congregation, is here as well. So the six of us are going to sit and talk a little bit, friend to friend, about our very dear friend. What a great hour this is for a very great man. We're back in a minute. Welcome back. So you've had a chance to hear from Emily and Katie and Scotty about what Mark meant to their organizations and how he helped them grow their outreach and impact. Two more guests join us now to add into the conversation. Jens Christensen is with the Habitat for Humanity, an organization that Mark loved dearly. And Eric Light is the pastor at Mark's beloved St. Mark's United Methodist Church. So good to see you both, and thanks for joining in. I'm going to start with you, Jens, because Scotty beautifully just tossed to you before the break. But boy, did he love Habitat for Humanity. And they were just talking off camera about how at auctions and things, Mark would outbid people, not because he wanted it, but just to keep the money coming in.
Absolutely. He would do it sometimes just because something wasn't moving. He was kind of impatient that way, and he wanted to make sure that the event was a success. So he'd buy things. He'd go home with things. Katie and I were laughing about the fact that he bought a wheelbarrow full of landscaping supplies at an event, and he lived in a condo. He didn't even have a yard.
But he took it, we found out, to the launch pad, so that Scotty's group could use it.
Donated it to another charity.
Yeah, that was awesome. Nothing was going to be wasted.
No, and I think that speaks to Mark. You know, I wore my lapel pin and this jacket both in honor of him today, because there were things that he treasured. This jacket, he actually sent me to his personal jacket supplier at Dillard's and made sure that I bought it from the right guy at the right time. And he would often come to meetings directly from a meeting at the launch pad or at Chamblas, and he would always have the lapel pin for the organization that he supported then, and he would often keep them in his pocket. And he'd pull it out and he'd change it over.
Because he had probably 3 meetings a day.
Exactly.
Where he had to show that. Each of you is doing a great job of kind of setting me up to lead into the next point, because here you are with Habitat for Humanity. Mark was known to be a very dapper dresser.
Oh, sure.
But he didn't think twice about rolling up his shirt sleeves when he needed to. He was physically involved too.
Oh, absolutely. One of the greatest things about him is that he was always there for you. He was there for everyone, and it was just beautiful. I often wondered how he ran his businesses. You know, he had several successful businesses, but if we had a groundbreaking, we had a home dedication, we had a family coming into the program, you could be sure Mark would be there, and he'd have his lapel pin on, and he'd be ready, he'd be proud, and he did it for everyone. And you know, there are a lot of things that he supported financially, there are a lot of things he supported with his presence, but the thing that I think will be irreplaceable is just the man, his kindness, his love for everyone, his support. He made everyone feel like he was there for them, and it was very beautiful.
So Eric, I want to bring you in, because I guess one of the reasons he had that ability was that he was very much a man of faith. And
Absolutely.
you saw that at the church.
Absolutely. You can see a tangible expression of Mark's faith and how he was driven by his faith to make a difference. And when Mark would talk about the church and the mission of the church to share God's love, the emotion was always just right there. And it was so powerful to see how real that was and compelling in Mark's life.
I think you told me a story on the phone a day or so ago about kind of something like that. You didn't go into great detail, but that sometimes the tears would kind of even be in his eyes. It was that real.
Absolutely. It's difficult for churches in this day and age, and our church is a smaller church, and Mark was always there on the forefront of keeping us moving forward, always very positive and encouraging. And one thing that people may not know is Mark was a part of a team of urban missionaries that came from Christ United Methodist, a very large church in our community, to actually save Little St. Mark's. It was about to close its doors, and Mark and a group of people revitalized the church. And someone said just in the last couple of days, if it wasn't for Mark, they wonder if the church would still be open today. And I mean, that's the kind of impact. And it's not just with his giving, it's with his time, his leadership, his strategic planning, and just everything that Mark, brings to all of our organizations.
Yeah.
Mark brought to the church.
Well, one thing that none of us has discussed yet, because I kind of wanted to wait until we were all assembled together, because I have a feeling I know where this is going to go the minute I say it, but we have not yet talked about his sweet mom. Right? Lois. And so family was everything for Mark. He enjoyed celebrating family and helping families stay together, and he had this busy schedule here in Tennessee, but I can't think of a single holiday, I can't think of one, that he was not in Kentucky with his mother. But you told me, Eric, that she would watch the services.
She does.
Online.
Every Sunday, she gets online and watches the live stream. And I don't know if it's because she's checking up on Mark or not.
Making sure you didn't skip.
Yes, but she always checks in and says she's with us. And how cool is that she's in Kentucky yet she's with us every Sunday.
We've seen a lot of great pictures, but the one that stopped me in my tracks is one, and he's holding up a sign. Have y'all noticed it yet? And he says, I think it says, "My mother is why." I don't know what that cause is from.
From
is
us.
it? I figured.
Yeah, he talked a lot about her in his platform, and especially when he was talking about women and their risk for heart disease. And so any meeting he sat in, he would talk about his mama, and that was his why. And that was evident in all that he did.
So something that surprised me kind of when all of you came in this morning, I kind of figured I was going to sit back and be the newcomer to the group in a way, thinking that the five of y'all would know each other quite well. The truth is you really don't necessarily, but the fact that Mark served each of you so thoroughly, what kind of personality, you mentioned him being a connector, can serve on that many boards. People want him to come back. He never ruffled feathers. He never was anything but a supporter and a helper.
And the energy level, I mean, I know we've talked about that too, but just to have the energy to support all of us and more. I mean, there could be 3 times as many people sitting here talking to you and telling you about all the things that Mark did and supported for them. And I know he jokes sometimes, he's like, yeah, I've gone to Habitat and Heart and all these things today, and he's like, I guess I better go do my real job so I can actually, support you all. But, I think he saw his business as a way for him to support all of our causes. And he made time for the business around all of our stuff.
I'll ask you this, Eric. I'll let you put your minister hat on again too. But I guess one of the reasons he had that sustainability, I would think, is because his joy came from within.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, when you see the great needs there are, and all of our organizations meet very real needs, that can be very draining and depressing, and you think, well, what can I do? It seems so overwhelming. But Mark never stopped at that. And Mark never stopped at just what he could do. So I think the power of connecting is so important. I'll tell one story about how Mark connected us with Chamblas.
Wait, can you save it?
Sure.
Okay, you save it. We've got to hit a commercial break because I wanted the storytelling to continue. So give us 1 second, hang tight, and Eric will share his story. We're back in a second. Okay, so I had to rudely pause Eric for a minute so we could catch that last commercial break. But continue your story, Eric, because you said it tied in with something that Katie...
Yes, to show that Mark's such a connector. So he says, hey, let's go to lunch one day. And he takes me to the presentation you guys are doing about your new initiative with the Isaiah House. And of course, it was very compelling and very moving about creating a safe space for children when they're being transitioned. And so as a result of that, our church on Christmas Eve took our Christmas Eve offering. And I think we were able to build like a bathroom in the house.
He
or
funded
something
one of the
like that.
bathrooms in the house.
So it just shows you how Mark, was able to connect and to really multiply his impact.
Yeah.
It's so powerful.
So, okay, listen to y'all segueing me on everything, but when Jens walked in today, he said, hey, listen, I just sent you a picture. Because you wanted to make sure we talked about his snarky sense of humor. So he sent in this picture of Mark. You're going to have to establish the setup for this.
Sure,
I don't dare do it.
So Mark was a very supportive and loving and just generous human being. He was there for everyone. We were kind of talking about this also while we were waiting, back behind the scenes, and talking about how he was just there for anyone. You could call him at 10 o'clock at night, he would answer the phone. He's been sick, at home. I've called him not knowing that. He's answered the phone and said, yeah, I'm kind of in the middle of being very sick, what can I do for you? You know, he was always there, but he also lived life in a huge way. He celebrated all the time. He was always one for a party. And he had a snarky sense of humor that really was hysterical. And so what I sent you this morning is at our last fundraiser, where he was a presenting sponsor, and he was also chair of the development committee, chair of the event itself, he was chair of everything, I think. But he would want to always be clever in how we did things. So we would auction off parts of a house. That's how we raise money to build a house. We'd auction off the roof, we'd auction off the bathroom, the bedroom, the doors, the windows. And when we got to the bathroom, we came up with an idea, and we put Mark on a toilet, and we labeled it, we painted Mark's throne on it, and we pushed him across in front of the stage in a room full of hundreds of people with Mark auctioning off a toilet. And that was just there's a photograph, that the one I sent you is more professional, of me pushing him. I've got my head turned, I'm hiding behind things because I can't stop.
Because you're embarrassed.
No, I can't stop cracking up. I mean, it's just Mark, and I'm like, he's literally letting me push him across an entire formal room of people on a toilet.
So he was willing to kind of take one for the team to keep those paddles raised. And yet you were saying, Emily, there are so many things that people will never know that he did, because when the spotlight was not on him, he was still giving.
Yeah, but that's what we were talking about. Is I think what we all wish more than anything is that people knew what he did when the spotlight wasn't on him, or that he was very present and helped and chaired and did everything that he could do with. But there's so much he did that no one knew. Behind the scenes, in the quiet hours when no one knew, and maybe people will never know about.
That really speaks to his humility.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, if you think about what the definition of humble is, that's truly what the man was. I mean, that's what that speaks to, especially in our program. We talk about being humble enough to do something for someone and not tell anybody about it. He did that every single day of his life, so he really is truly a humble man.
I guess when something happens when you hit your mid-50s and you reflect in kind of a different way, but I've begun to really believe that your life is all about the habits you form. And so a good habit builds to more and more and more good habits, and vice versa, obviously. But he must have somewhere along the road just begun this habit of he chose his life to give and to be humble and to think about others. I'm sure he made that a purpose every day. What was it that you said your last text from him was?
68 and sunny.
Because he was down there in Key West.
Yeah.
Always sunny.
He was texting on New Year's Day and just telling me that he loved me, and I was like, how's the weather down there? And 68 and sunny, just like his attitude.
I guess one of the images I'll have of him always is being on his phone, because he really was. But I'm understanding more and more why, because you said you got texts or emails daily from him.
Oh yeah, he was so plugged in, and Scotty,
he never didn't respond.
You said humble. He would have no idea, or he really had no idea how people esteemed him, how people really just loved him and thought of him. He was a truly humble man.
Which is so hard to think, being such the dynamic person, the person you see on billboards, the person that was on TV. It was hard to think that he wasn't. He was that authentic all the time. It wasn't a show. It wasn't just for TV. It wasn't, just for promoting his business. He really was a kind soul.
He was humble, but he thought the church was named after him, and I didn't want
I wondered if that's why he had.
Maybe it should be. You might want to reconsider it.
We have to save St. Mark's. It's named after me.
That is so great. Okay, so let me ask you something. I will, first of all, I want to say, if you haven't noticed, but we lit a candle. That's kind of an eternal tribute to somebody that you've lost. And so we've lit a candle, and I have to wonder if he can kind of eavesdrop on us as we're talking, and would he approve?
I hope so.
I hope so too. Yeah. I hope so too. I hope that people won't ever feel like he's far removed from the places he loved and contributed to. The funeral services, can you tell us a little bit, Eric?
Yes, Saturday the 13th. We believe that there will be so many people that want to celebrate Mark's life that we don't feel like we can host it at St. Mark's. So our friends at Christ United Methodist have graciously opened up their sanctuary. So Saturday the 13th at 11 a.m. we'll be celebrating Mark's life.
Okay, so probably get there early.
Yes.
I'm sure that, and you will be officiating.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's going to be a wonderful celebration of who Mark meant to all of us.
His sweet mother will be here.
She will be?
Yes.
Okay, okay. Since we've all been saying a lot of words already, it might be hard to find some new ones, but I've got a couple of minutes left, so I'll put you on the spot. If you had to go around, think of one word to describe him, what would that one word be? Anybody come up with one?
A giver of all things, of himself, of his money, of his time. He was just a giver.
Mine was going to be encourager.
Definitely encourager. That's a great one. And somebody already called him a connector, so I don't want to steal that one. That was
You can have that one. You can have that one.
I was going to say that I would say connector, or for me personally, a mentor.
Yeah. So I'm going to cheat a little bit. There's a story that takes half a second to tell, but one of the things that he was most proud of that I remember was when he bought his mother a new car. And if you all knew Mark, you knew he was a Mercedes guy. His mom is not a Mercedes guy. His mom, or a person, his mom liked Chevrolets, and he let her go pick it out, and he was just so proud. He posted it on Facebook, he talked about it, and just the ability to do that. And for me, the word is friend. He was, to everyone, he was a friend.
Good one.
I think joy as well. Someone mentioned servant leader. Certainly that's very true. But just that joy, you always saw Mark with that smile, even when he's solving a problem. And let's be honest, most of the time when he's in leadership, you're solving problems. But it never got Mark down. He was always so joyful.
And you know, he would do that through his own, he had some battles, and I don't want to tell his story, but he battled some depression. And he was still able to exude happiness and joy and make us love life the way he loved life.
And you'd often end a conversation with him if there had been something to work out where you had kind of found it, the answer, and he would go, "It's good, it'll be good." Yeah. And then you'd move on. We've got to move on. We're back in a minute. Our final thoughts with Mark. We have been around friends this morning, and we include you in that definition, and I think all of us here today on the show have really enjoyed having a chance to remember our good friend Mark Hite, so we're so glad that you were able to be a part of it. He was a gift to all of us. The funeral services again are planned for next Saturday, January 13th. It begins at 11 o'clock. I would encourage you to get there early. As you heard Pastor Eric Light say, they've chosen that church because it is a large one to accommodate the crowd at Christ Methodist Church in East Brainerd. As we say goodbye to our sweet friend, you'll hear from him in a little bit, you'll see some pictures, and just I hope that all of us will find a way to discover our own gifts and use them for good. We love you, Mark.
We love Chattanooga, Tennessee. We sell Chattanooga, Tennessee, but we're also pretty darn engaged in the many things and opportunities going on in our community.
And what do I see first but a turkey hat? And I knew it had to be Mark Hite.
Here we are.
Not because he's a turkey, but because he loves